You are currently obeying dozens of strict laws that literally do not exist. Your parents, your boss, and Hollywood have completely brainwashed you into fearing imaginary rules. Today, we are exposing the most absurd fake laws you probably still believe are completely true. Prepare to realize exactly how easily your reality has been manipulated. 1. Driving with your car's interior dome light on is absolutely not a crime, despite the sheer, unadulterated panic your father exhibited when you touched that switch in the backseat back in 1998. Millions of us grew up genuinely believing that flipping on that tiny little ceiling bulb would instantly summon a fleet of SWAT vehicles to our family minivan. The truth is, across the entire United States, there is zero legislation stating that illuminating your cabin is a ticketable offense. Police officers certainly find it annoying because the light creates a massive glare on the windshield, making it significantly harder for you to see the dark road outside. It effectively turns the glass into a mirror, reflecting your own dashboard. However, they cannot legally pull you over and issue a citation just for having a bright ceiling. It is entirely a fake law created by stressed parents who just wanted to focus on the highway. 2. Setting up clever, complicated booby traps to protect your private property from violent burglars is actually a massive federal felony. We all grew up watching classic holiday movies where resourceful homeowners brutally defend their houses with swinging paint cans, heated doorknobs, and blowtorches, assuming the right to self-defense covered this kind of creative engineering. It absolutely does not. In the eyes of the justice system, these are known as illegal man-traps. The legal philosophy here is very simple and strictly enforced. Human life is always valued infinitely higher than physical property. Even if a trespassing criminal breaks into your remote, completely empty hunting cabin to steal a cheap television, they do not legally deserve to be maimed by a rigged shotgun hidden behind the front door. If your clever little trap injures or kills an intruder while you are not even in the building to be physically threatened, you will be the one going straight to prison for premeditated assault or manslaughter. 3. You are not legally required to use a massively expensive commercial cemetery when a family member tragically passes away. The funeral industry desperately wants you to believe their premium, highly marked up services are mandated by federal law, but they are entirely optional. In the vast majority of American states, you can absolutely bypass the overpriced caskets and bury a deceased relative right in your own backyard. As long as you own the property outright, secure the proper local zoning permits, and follow specific depth regulations to ensure you do not contaminate the local groundwater supply, your personal garden can legally become a private family graveyard. It requires a bit of tedious paperwork and a thorough understanding of your local health codes. But there is no overarching law forcing you to pay a corporation $10,000 for a tiny plot of grass. Would you ever consider turning your peaceful backyard into a permanent, legal resting place for your loved ones? 4. Driving a vehicle with a pair of headphones or wireless earbuds securely in your ears is not universally illegal across the country. While your paranoid relatives confidently insist it is a strict federal offense that will immediately void your insurance, there is simply no nationwide ban. In fact, over 30 states currently allow you to drive while wearing modern headphones without breaking a single specific statute. Now, from a purely logical standpoint, it is undeniably dangerous. Plunging yourself into a noise-canceling podcast completely isolates you from the crucial sounds of emergency sirens, screeching tires, or a screaming car horn. If that auditory isolation directly causes you to miss a warning and crash your car, officers will absolutely slap you with a severe distracted driving ticket. But the actual act of wearing them while casually cruising down the highway is perfectly legal in most jurisdictions. 5. There is absolutely zero legislation explicitly banning you from eating a massive, incredibly messy cheeseburger while driving your car. Fast food lovers constantly experience a wave of pure panic when they spot a police cruiser in their rearview mirror, hastily hiding their French fries under the seat like they are smuggling illegal contraband. The truth is, no state has a specific law that says you cannot consume a meal behind the wheel. However, this is where the legal trap snaps shut. If a giant dollop of hot ketchup suddenly drips directly onto your lap, causing you to violently flinch and swerve your vehicle across 3 lanes of busy traffic, you will immediately be pulled over and heavily cited for reckless or distracted driving. The food itself is totally legal, but the terrifying consequences of your clumsy multitasking are not. Are you really willing to risk a massive collision and a huge fine just to finish a lukewarm drive-thru meal before you get home? 6. Riding a bicycle on a standard pedestrian sidewalk is actually illegal for adults in many major metropolitan areas. We instinctively assume that paved roads are exclusively for heavy cars and that sidewalks function as a universally safe haven for absolutely anything on two wheels. In truth, the law heavily disagrees. Once you reach adulthood, bicycles are legally classified as actual vehicles in most urban jurisdictions. You are legally required to ride in the street with the heavy traffic, follow the exact same traffic lights as cars, stop at every single stop sign, and physically signal your turns. Pedestrians hold the exclusive right to the sidewalk, and dodging them on a mountain bike can easily result in a hefty municipal fine. It is a terrifying reality for casual cyclists who just want a relaxing afternoon ride. 7. You can legally purchase, register, and proudly drive a demilitarized military tank right down to your local grocery store. Everyone assumes these massive machines of war are exclusively reserved for the armed forces, but the civilian market is surprisingly open. While the federal government heavily restricts explosive armor-piercing ammunition and requires the main active cannons to be permanently disabled, the actual heavily armored vehicle itself is perfectly legal to own in most states. As long as you swap the destructive metal tracks for street-legal rubber treads so you do not shred the city asphalt, install basic headlights, and add functional turn signals, your colossal war machine is legally classified as just another heavy vehicle. You might get terrible gas mileage, but you will definitely win every single dispute over a parking space. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated terror of the person aggressively trying to cut you off in rush-hour traffic when they look in their rearview mirror and see a tank. 8. Refusing to sign a basic traffic ticket will not brilliantly save you from a fine, but it will absolutely guarantee you a free, highly uncomfortable ride in the back of a police cruiser. A bizarre, deeply ingrained legal myth claims that putting your pen to that citation is a formal legal admission of guilt, effectively sealing your fate before a judge. It absolutely is not. Your signature is literally just a written promise that you acknowledge the ticket and will show up to your scheduled court date to officially fight the charges. If you dramatically fold your arms and refuse to sign it out of pure stubbornness or some misguided internet legal advice, the officer's only legal recourse to ensure you actually appear in court is to arrest you on the spot. You will be handcuffed, your car will be towed, and your afternoon will be ruined. Save the theatrical rebellion for the actual courtroom where it belongs, and just sign the tiny piece of paper to continue your day. 9. Screaming aggressive profanities and flipping off a police officer is an incredibly stupid life choice, but it is not technically a crime. Many people logically assume there must be a specific, strict law against openly disrespecting law enforcement to their face. However, the United States Supreme Court has repeatedly and clearly ruled that swearing at the police is heavily protected under the First Amendment as your right to free speech. They cannot legally slap handcuffs on you just because you hurt their pride or used highly offensive hand gestures. That being said, while the specific act of insulting them is legal, doing so makes you an immediate target. An irritated officer will absolutely find a legitimate, secondary reason to make your evening absolutely miserable. They will suddenly notice you are jaywalking, cite you for a public disturbance, or discover a microscopic crack in your taillight. 10. The legendary retail myth that a store is legally forced to sell you an expensive item if the physical price tag is misprinted is entirely false. Every single retail worker in history has faced an angry, screaming customer demanding a brand new $1,000 flat-screen television for $10 just because a tired employee accidentally dropped a zero on the sticker. They confidently yell that it is the law. In actual contract law, a physical price tag on a shelf is merely classified as an invitation to treat, not a legally binding offer that you have officially accepted. The store owner has the absolute legal right to recognize the mathematical mistake, refuse to complete the transaction, and correct the price directly at the register before any money changes hands. Your brilliant attempt to mathematically exploit a minimum wage teenager's labeling error is absolutely not protected by the justice system. Have you ever tried to argue your way into a massive discount using this fake rule? 11. It is completely legal to pass a marked police cruiser on the highway, provided you are not exceeding the posted speed limit to do so. We have all been trapped in that painful, agonizing phenomenon where an entire four-lane freeway suddenly slows down to form a terrified, tightly packed convoy behind a single squad car cruising at 55 miles per hour. Everyone is sweating, gripping the steering wheel and refusing to move ahead. But if the official speed limit is legitimately 65, you are well within your legal rights to simply use the left lane, maintain a legal speed, and casually pass them by. Officers are not actively daring you to pass them so they can issue a trap ticket. Yet, an unwritten rule of deep psychological intimidation forces modern society to politely and frustratingly trail behind them like ducklings. Next time you are stuck in one of those rolling roadblocks, will you finally be the brave soul who legally breaks the invisible barrier? 12. You cannot legally stop someone from recording you in a standard public space by dramatically waving your hands and screaming that you do not consent. The famous two-party consent laws that everyone suddenly pretends to be an expert on only apply in specific areas where you possess a reasonable expectation of privacy, like a closed public restroom, a medical facility, or inside your own bedroom. If you are throwing a massive, theatrical public tantrum on a busy city sidewalk, in the middle of a public park, or in the parking lot of a local grocery store, you have absolutely zero privacy rights. Any random bystander can legally pull out their smartphone, hit record, and broadcast your embarrassing public meltdown directly to the entire internet. You can call the police and complain all you want, but law enforcement cannot legally force that person to delete the footage. When you step outside your front door, your actions belong to the public domain. Is your privacy an illusion? 13. A police officer completely hiding their cruiser behind a massive local billboard or a cluster of overgrown bushes to catch speeding drivers is absolutely not illegal entrapment. People confidently argue this ridiculous point in traffic court every single day, aggressively claiming it is unfair trickery and therefore the ticket should be dismissed. Legal entrapment only occurs in very specific situations when law enforcement forcefully coerces, threatens, or relentlessly pressures you into committing a crime you otherwise would never have even considered committing. Sitting quietly out of sight with a radar gun and passively watching you willingly choose to drive 25 miles over the speed limit is not trickery. It is just highly effective police work. The police are under no legal obligation to make themselves highly visible so you can temporarily slow down. Stupidity is not a valid legal defense, even if you feel deeply betrayed by a sneaky clump of highway landscaping. 14. You do not need a strict federal background check, a special tactical permit, or any government registration whatsoever to legally buy a military-grade flamethrower. While modern society fiercely and endlessly debates the intricate legalities of purchasing a basic hunting rifle or a standard handgun, 48 American states consider massive flamethrowers to be completely unregulated agricultural tools. There are literally no federal laws restricting you from going online, ordering a terrifying device that shoots 30 feet of pressurized liquid fire, and having it casually delivered right to your front porch by a completely unbothered standard mail carrier. As long as you are not actively burning down a national forest, the government views it the exact same way they view a lawnmower or a snowblower. It is an utterly terrifying legal loophole brilliantly disguised as heavy-duty weed control. Does it concern you what your weird neighbor might be legally keeping in their garden shed? 15. The First Amendment will absolutely not protect you from getting immediately fired over a highly offensive social media post. Millions of Americans blindly and arrogantly believe that freedom of speech is a magical, impenetrable shield that applies everywhere and protects them from all consequences. It does not. The First Amendment explicitly and exclusively prevents the government from arresting you or throwing you in prison for your personal opinions. Your private corporate employer is not the federal government. If your boss decides your unhinged weekend online rant completely violates their corporate culture, ruins their brand image, or offends their clients, they possess the absolute legal authority to terminate your employment immediately. You will not be arrested by the police for your post, but you will definitely be packing up your desk. Freedom of speech is not, and has never been, freedom from the very real consequences of your own public stupidity. Remember that before you hit send. 16. As a law-abiding American citizen, you are absolutely not legally required to carry a physical identification card on your person while simply walking down a public street. Despite what highly aggressive mall security guards or overly confident bouncers might loudly bark at you, the United States does not actually have a mandatory national ID law for standard pedestrians. Stop and identify statutes only apply if law enforcement has a reasonable, articulable suspicion that you are actively committing a crime. Unless you are actively driving a motorized vehicle, carrying a concealed firearm, or trying to board a commercial flight, you can legally exist in a public space with completely empty pockets. You are not a walking barcode, and you do not need papers simply to exist on a sidewalk. 17. If your bank makes a massive, catastrophic accounting error and accidentally deposits $50,000 directly into your personal checking account, you cannot legally keep a single dime of it. The classic, beloved Monopoly card, bank error in your favor, is a complete devastating myth in the real world. If you look at your newly inflated balance and instantly transfer that money, buy a luxury sports car, or immediately withdraw it all in unmarked cash, you are actively committing criminal theft. The financial institution holds the absolute legal right to completely reverse the transaction the exact second they notice the clerical mistake. No matter how desperately you want to keep the windfall, if you spent the money before they catch on, you are legally required to pay back every single penny. It is not a magical lottery win, it is just a massive legal headache waiting to happen. Would you have the incredible willpower to report the error immediately? 18. A local convenience store is absolutely not legally required to accept your crumpled $100 bill when you are just trying to buy a $2 pack of chewing gum. The official phrase, legal tender for all debts, public and private, heavily printed right on the physical cash, deeply confuses most people. That specific federal rule only legally applies to pre-existing debts, like paying a massive restaurant tab after you have already eaten the food. However, a simple retail transaction at a cash register is legally classified as a mutual exchange, not an existing debt. Private businesses have the complete, unarguable legal right to refuse massive bills, massive jars of unrolled pennies, or any physical currency they simply do not want to deal with. They can demand exact change or card only, and you cannot force them to take your money. Why do we act so incredibly offended when a private store simply doesn't want to completely empty their cash drawer just to make change for us? 19. You cannot legally justify your reckless speeding just because every single other car on the highway is doing the exact same thing. The mythical flow of traffic defense is completely and utterly useless when you are standing in front of a traffic judge. Drivers genuinely believe that if the left lane is cruising at a terrifying 85 miles per hour, matching their insane speed magically makes you immune to receiving a ticket. In reality, speed limits are absolute and highly inflexible legal boundaries. A highway patrol officer can absolutely single you out, legally pull you from that fast-moving pack of vehicles, and write you a massive, expensive citation for going just 2 miles over the posted limit, while everyone else speeds away. It does not matter what the crowd is doing, you are individually responsible for your own speedometer. 20. Marrying your first cousin is perfectly legal in 19 different American states. Despite the universal societal disgust and the immediate, shuddering assumption that this must be a horrific federal crime everywhere, the law doesn't care about your family tree. States like California, New York, and Florida will happily and legally issue marriage licenses to first cousins without a single legal hurdle or awkward question asked. The cultural taboo surrounding this is incredibly strong, creating the powerful, widespread illusion of a strict, nationwide ban. However, from a strictly legal standpoint, the government frankly does not care who you bring as your plus one to the altar, even if you share the exact same grandparents. We constantly confuse deep moral revulsion with actual, written legislation. 21. It is completely, 100% legal for a total stranger to stand on a public city sidewalk and take highly detailed photographs of your private home. Homeowners frequently fly into a rage and threaten to call the police over this, falsely assuming their property lines grant them a magical, invisible force field of visual privacy. Legally speaking, if something can be easily seen with the naked eye from a public street, it is absolute fair game for photography or video recording. You possess absolutely no legal expectation of privacy for the exterior of your house, your perfectly manicured front lawn, or whatever you left sitting on your porch. The police will not arrest a photographer for standing on public concrete. If you genuinely do not want the outside world looking into your life, the legal burden is entirely on you to close your expensive blinds. Does it make you uneasy knowing your front door is constantly in the public domain? 22. Grocery stores are absolutely not breaking any federal health laws if they sell you a perfectly sealed box of cereal months past its printed best by date. Consumers constantly panic over these tiny little ink stamps, blindly assuming they are strict, government-mandated health deadlines that will instantly poison them. Aside from infant formula, which is heavily monitored, the federal government does not regulate expiration dates on your groceries whatsoever. They are merely arbitrary, unregulated suggestions completely created by the food manufacturers to indicate peak freshness and taste, not actual food safety. A supermarket is legally allowed to buy, heavily discount, and sell older, stale food to you as long as it isn't visibly rotting or actively spoiling on the shelf. You aren't buying illegal contraband. You are just buying a slightly chewier cracker. 23. An employer does absolutely not need a highly documented, perfectly valid reason to legally fire you from your job. The comforting corporate myth of the mandatory 3 strikes rule, or the idea that you require a series of formal written warnings before termination, is a complete HR illusion. Nearly all American states operate under incredibly brutal at-will employment laws. This terrifying legal reality means your boss can officially terminate your employment simply because they do not like the color of your shoelaces, because your zodiac sign annoys them, or just because it is raining heavily outside. As long as the firing is not explicitly based on protected, illegal discrimination like race, religion, or gender, you can be shown the door instantly without a single word of explanation or severance package. Loyalty in the modern corporate world is completely one-sided. Does knowing how easily you can be legally replaced make you feel secure in your daily 9-to-5 routine? 24. Restaurants and cafes are under absolutely no legal obligation whatsoever to provide you with a free glass of tap water. We all firmly and universally believe that this is a fundamental human right written deep into local municipal health codes, but it is largely just standard industry hospitality. Aside from a very few hyper-specific, highly contested local ordinances in extremely hot, desert-like climates, a private dining establishment can legally flat-out refuse to give you tap water. They can ruthlessly charge you $3 for a plastic cup of ice or force you to buy an expensive bottle of imported sparkling water if you are thirsty. They own the plumbing, and they own the water bill. They give it away for free because angering your customers before they even order an appetizer is an incredibly terrible business model, not because the police will shut them down. Would you ever actually return to a local spot that aggressively charged you just to drink from their sink? 25. Drawing a ridiculous curly mustache on George Washington will absolutely not trigger a massive Secret Service investigation. The strict federal law regarding the defacement of United States currency only makes it a criminal act if you alter the bill with the specific, malicious intent to commit financial fraud. If you cleverly wash a $1 bill, reprint it to look exactly like a $100 bill, and try to spend it at the mall, you are committing a massive federal felony. But merely doodling a funny hat on a president, stamping a loud political message across the paper, or accidentally tearing off the corner in your wallet is perfectly 100% legal. Your physical money is technically your personal property to lightly vandalize, as long as it remains recognizable. 26. Down in the great state of Texas, it is perfectly, undeniably legal to confidently stroll down a public street openly carrying a medieval broadsword, a massive machete, or a heavy battle axe. When controversial open-carry laws are aggressively debated on the news, absolutely everyone immediately thinks of firearms and handguns. But back in 2017, Texas state legislation was officially passed that explicitly eliminated the long-standing restriction on carrying blades longer than 5.5 inches in public spaces. This means you can legally march right into a local coffee shop or a grocery store wearing a massive scabbard and looking exactly like a 12th century crusader ready for combat. As long as you aren't actively threatening anyone, the police cannot do a single thing to stop your bizarre cosplay. Does the idea of someone ordering a vanilla latte with a 40-inch claymore strapped to their back make you feel safer or completely terrified? We have covered almost everything, but before our final number, it is time for the final verdict. The award for the most ridiculous fake law undeniably goes to the misprinted price tag myth. Simply because the sheer arrogance of thinking a tired teenager's typo legally entitles you to a $1,000 television for $10 is pure comedy. We all know someone who has aggressively tried this. Do you agree with our ruling, or did another absurd rule deserve the crown? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And now, our final entry. 27. You will absolutely not get a traffic ticket if the overhead light violently turns red while you are still helplessly trapped right in the middle of a busy intersection. A massive driving misconception forces anxious people to aggressively slam on their brakes. The millisecond a traffic light flashes yellow. Legally speaking, as long as your vehicle's front bumper successfully crossed the designated white stop line while the light was still yellow, you have the absolute right-of-way to finish your turn and safely clear the intersection. The intersecting cross traffic that just got the green light legally has to sit there, wait patiently, and allow you to entirely move out of the way before they can hit the gas. You are not running a red light. You are legally completing a lawful maneuver. The line between what is strictly illegal and what society simply finds unacceptable is shockingly blurred. We constantly let pure anxiety dictate our actions. So I have to ask, if all social pressure vanished tomorrow, what perfectly legal but deeply frowned upon thing would you do first? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button to stay awake, and I will see you in the next one.